bleep you. This is our way.
Yes, loud.
Stevens is pretty smart and knows what he's doing.
That 3-and-D roll. Go, it's a D-League.
If I had Antoine Walker's body, I'd be an all-star.
Hello, Celtics Nation, and welcome back. Banners broadcast number 22, I think, at this point, Jeff. Jeff Clark is with us today for another edition of the official Celtics blog podcast, the Banners broadcast. And today we're going to get into some topics ranging from Jayson Tatum, draft picks, and a number of roundtables our staff sent to us. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you very much. The Banners broadcast, the one and only.
Yeah, we're loving it. New year, new Banners broadcast. We had Justin Rowan on last week. Good discussion on the Cavaliers, who we're going to get into today as well. Of course, interesting developments on the Isaiah front, the Jay Crowder front. We always love looking down there. It's just become a constant source of intrigue on our end now, on top of what was already an intriguing developing rivalry with the Cavaliers over the last couple of years. Things aren't going great over there, but we've seen this before, Jeff, but we'll get to that at the end of the episode. First things first, if you guys like the show, want to give some critiques or anything else, send them my way at Real Bob Manning or at Celtics Blog. You can send them right to the boss, and he'll let me hear it. If you like the show, give us a review and rate on iTunes. That's the best way you can show your support for the show. And, of course, check out all the great content we have at Celtics Blog. Let's get into it, Jeff.
Sounds good.
Tatum, we are, I want to say, just under a year. We're probably 7-8 months into the Jayson Tatum era now, which is going to be a great long era as we hope. And it started off controversial. Now it feels unanimous in that it was just a great, astounding pick that Danny Ainge couldn't have done any better on. And we saw him in full force in London. It was amazing. That was as good as I've seen him look all season. Just taking over the game into the third quarter, hitting shot after shot, getting to the rim at will, showing off versatility offensively, really. And that prompted you, of course, to write your article about him, which is up at Celtics Blog now. What is your thinking on Tatum right now, obviously, beyond the fact that we can all just say he's amazing? Give us a little more insight than that.
Well, the funny thing is that I started thinking about writing that piece a few days ago, because he's just been fantastic all season, and it's been a joy to watch him develop at warp speed at such an early age. The onus of the piece is just sort of this fan mentality of, like, how excited am I going to allow myself to be about this young guy? I mean, we've seen so many young players show potential and they show, little glimmers here and there, but this guy just has so much more than pretty much just any other rookie that I've seen come along. Just so much more poise, so much more. I mean, we're talking about like the deep stuff, like off the ball movement, where to be on a screen, where to be on a rotation, like how he needs to set up and when to go on transition, like and when to hold the ball up, kind of like pace and speed and just all the things that you would imagine that a pace and space from a rookie when he's playing like a veteran player. So that alone gives me a lot of hope. And then you add in the fact that he's just, shooting the lights out of the ball. He's one of the leading, like one of the top two, 3-point shooters. He's got all these amazing talents in terms of getting his shot off at any place on the court. So, I mean, there's just so much to enjoy about his game. And I haven't even started to talk about how the fact he's just yamming on people, which is just fun to see. So that's just
amazing. That's my favorite thing about Al Horford, those moments where he just gets ferocious. Because I'm starting to see, people have been doing these comparisons on Tatum. Who is he? Is he Paul Pierce? Is he Carmelo Anthony? Is he this guy, that guy? It's tough, and we've done that before on the show. The guy who I don't hear a lot when it comes to comparisons about him, and obviously they're different positions, but in demeanor, in the way they approach the game, I see a lot of Horford in him. The length, the defensive prowess we've seen in him, the shooting, of course, and obviously just the unflappability, as you like to say about Tatum. They both have that demeanor where they're able to go through the flow of the game. Both don't show a lot of emotion. They both are pretty level-headed, whether there's bad calls or anything else. And then there'll be those moments where they just completely unload on the front line and are dunking over two people, and you're like, whoa, he's got that in him too.
Yep. Yeah, I like to say he's completely devoid of flap. So he's totally unflappable. Yeah, I like the Al Horford comparison. He's like Al Horford with a lot more swag. But I was going to say maybe a little bit of Tim Duncan in there too. We're kind of comparing him to, for lack of a better word, boring people. He's got a little flow to him. He's got a little bit of swagger to his gait, if not his tongue, if you will. So I enjoy seeing him out on the court. He looks like he belongs.
That's the way it is with us 19-year-olds. We got to keep it cool.
Yeah. You definitely bring the swagger on the podcast. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I gotta. You're like the Horford around here. I gotta be the Tatum to this podcast.
Very nice. Very nice.
What I do bring to this conversation, what made me bring up that Horford point is, this hasn't been talked about with Tatum either, and I was able to get a chance to be in the locker room over this winter break. And the first person I walked by going through the hallway was Tatum. And I'll say this, we talk a lot about the height of players, whether the listed height is real, the measurements are legit, and that was obviously a big topic with Kevin Garnett. I heard Jeff Van Gundy say this on one of the broadcasts last week. It might have been the Minnesota one or one of those ones there. This guy is definitely taller than 6'8". He is 6'9", 6'10", maybe even 6'11", and you see it in the way he rebounds. And walking by him in the hallway, this was one massive human being. He might even be Horford's height or even a little bit taller. His length is unbelievable. The physical tools he has are just off the charts, and he does so much with them. Looking back at draft time, there was a stylistic concern with him. People were worried about the way he approaches the game, if the college techniques he was going to be bringing to the NBA level were going to be able to translate. And what still blows my mind to this day, looking back at the Duke tape, is he just transitioned his approach perfectly to fit the Celtics system, to fit the NBA system. There were so many post-ups, so many isolation face-ups in the Duke system. And I'm still flabbergasted, even as a guy who was a big Tatum guy, that he was able to make those adjustments so quickly where he'd fit in the flow of not only the Stevens system, but the NBA that has gone away from those tendencies he showed in college.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, the guy can ball. I mean, that's what it boils down to. He knows how, like, some people just have an innate gift for scoring buckets, and he's one of them. We picked him third, whatever, but it's like, that's what you want, is a guy who can just generate his own offense. That's a guy we've been waiting for forever. And that's the other, part of my piece, too, is the fact that, hey, this guy could not just be a phenomenal rookie. He could be that franchise guy. Like, he could be better than Kyrie someday, and not too far in the distant future either. There is no ceiling for this guy. With apologies to MJ, the roof, the ceiling has no roof. Okay, so this guy is just. I'm not willing to put any kind of limitations on what he can become. Now, I'm not signing him up for the Hall of Fame or the All-Star game or anything at this point. He's still just 19, and that's kind of me kind of checking myself. But you can kind of almost hear my internal struggle even as I talk about him, right? So it's like I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but at the same time, he's just so good. And I look at him and I say, like you said, he's so long, he's so good, he shoots so well. He's Larry Bird with Kevin McHale's arms. Like that's nuts, okay? And the other funny thing is you talk about his length. I love the fact that he's now doing wraparound passes to the 3-point line. That almost shouldn't be fair. He looks like Randy Johnson out there, just throwing it from one end of the court to the other and wrapping completely around somebody like Plastic Man or something. We've run out of legitimate comparison to this. The first to Jayson Tatum, like that's that he is what he is.
Jayson Tatum won.
Yeah, exactly. 1.0.
It's fitting that he's wearing number 0 too in the aftermath of Avery Bradley, because we are seeing him put new pieces on his game month after month. That was the calling card of Avery Bradley here, is how he just kept laying his game year after year, month after month, putting little pieces you didn't expect. Last year of Avery Bradley, the rebounding he added, going from like 3 rebounds a game up to almost 7 that season, was ridiculous.
The common denominator there is just work ethic. Both those guys work so hard on their game, and that's what pays off.
Yeah, and that's what I love to see out of these young players is transitioning their games beyond what we think they can be. Because we had certain doubts about what Jayson Tatum could be defensively, and he's alleviated those with those blocks around the rim. He also does this thing where he'll be circling around a player with the ball, and I've never seen anyone really do this. We've seen a lot of great players with great length in this league, but what Tatum has the mind to do with that length is he'll just walk by a player with the ball, stick his arm in the vicinity, and like half the time he does it, the ball just sort of seems to pop loose, and he's been able to generate a ton of steals doing that this year. It's one of my favorite things he does on top of all the other great, amazing things we see him do on a nightly basis. And looking back on it, he's only had like 2 or 3 nights where you say, oh, he struggled tonight. He finds a way to be efficient, even if he doesn't start the game that way. By the end of the game, his percentages look pretty good, and he has the awareness to pick his spots, which is great too. It is really hard to find something negative to say about his season.
When we came out of the draft and all the scouting reports on him were, we already talked about like he plays inside the arc. Well, that's been solved. Right from Summer League, Brad Stevens was saying, hey, this guy can ball on defense, and we're seeing it right now. I mean, like if you had told me at draft night that he could play this level of defense this early in his career, I would have been right there with Danny Ainge and say, okay, number 1 draft pick, let's go ahead and pick him.
So 5:38 before the season, Jeff released in anticipation of the Celtics record, had them in the 40s, lower than the Vegas odds, and then once Hayward went down, had them slated at 37 wins. So beyond just people's expectations of the team going down once Hayward went down with that injury on opening night, so did the math. All the projections and everything expected out of all the players that were present once Hayward went down. All the math had it coming out to 37 wins, and they're already at 34-10 to this point. And there's a lot of reward to go around for the start, this absurd start that they've been on. It's still amazing that they're 24 wins over 500. It's unbelievable, really. I don't think anyone would have expected this. What percentage, if we had to put like a mathematical percentage on it, do you think Tatum has played in that outcome?
Well, first of all, I'm not a gambling man, but can I put some money down on them exceeding 37 wins?
I would say that'd be a solid. I don't know how the odds would be on that one at this point.
What percentage of the wins or what the good record is due to Jayson Tatum? I don't know. It's probably pretty low in the grand scheme of things. It's just because I think Kyrie's carrying the offense, Al Horford is facilitating the offense, and Jayson Tatum is and Jaylen Brown for that matter are picking up the kind of role that Gordon Hayward vacated, kind of like that third scoring option. Between the two of them, they're kind of combining like Voltron to kind of form what he in theory would have given the team if he was healthy. So yeah, I don't know. So let's say 10% to 15% of the success that they've had is due to Jayson Tatum, and I think that's a huge compliment for a guy, a rookie, a 19-year-old rookie that's coming into the league raw.
I'd put it higher than that, though. I think the defensive impact he's had, the offensive impact he's had, and just the reliability of him being a cog in the lineup, leaning on him to be that starting small forward, steady veteran production every single night. And he definitely has exceeded expectations, but I look across the roster and wonder if it wasn't him, I don't know who else would have been able to fill that role.
Well, clearly you're wrong on this purely subjective matter. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yes, he's clearly important. I think that Horford and Kyrie are just so good and so good at this, at leading this team, and they're veterans. They know what to do. They're leading the way. I mean, he's obviously very important. He might be. I think just at this very moment, I think Jaylen Brown is probably already the third best player on the team, and Tatum's not far behind. So that's saying something right there, and it just speaks to the depth that this team has is that they have that many good players, even with Gordon Hayward out.
Yeah, it's impressive for sure, and he definitely is picking up fast on Brown. Brown, we're still waiting on that consistency factor with Brown. That's still my big thing with him to this day, is can he be an every-night impact guy, or is it just going to be spotty? Like, someone compared him recently to Jeff Green, which is excessive, I think, at this point, if we're talking inconsistency. But that worried me a little bit. It crept that seed of doubt in my mind to say, I really hope that doesn't go in that direction, because I think you know well that was one of the more unpleasant experiments in Celtics history for sure.
For Jaylen Brown, I still give him the kind of young player pass, if you will. I mean, the thing that separates good young from good veteran is consistency, like you're talking about, right? So, Jaylen Brown's going to show signs of brilliance and domination in some games, and then completely disappear in other games. But that is a rookie or a second-year player's tendency. But when they become veterans, what separates them from the pack, what separates them from being a good to great player, is that consistency. And so when you see him, contributing X amount, it doesn't even have to be a ton. I'm not expecting him to be a 20-point scorer with 10 rebounds and all this other stuff. I just want him to be 18 points, reliable every night, playing hard-nosed defense and showing no fear and giving us what he can give us. And if anything over and above that, in my mind, already is gravy. And I think he's got that potential. He's got the potential to be a 20-point scorer. Don't get me wrong, but I think he seems to be more of that jack of all trades, master of none type of guy that is going to be impacting the game in so many different facets, maybe like an Andre Iguodala type, or something.
I like that comparison a little better.
Well, a lot better than Jeff Green, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So recently, we've had conversations in the past about Danny Ainge's draft track record, and today's a good day to do it with Jayson Tatum being the theme of the show. And I have an interesting theory on the draft track record of late. Spur of the moment type thing that dawned upon me this week. Ever since Brad Stevens arrived, Ainge's draft record has been pretty good. We're going to read through it real quick right here, and you can basically respond to all these names with good or bad as I read across them. Jayson Tatum.
Good.
Semi Ojeleye.
Good for his draft position.
Kadeem Allen.
Undecided.
Jabari Bird.
Undecided.
And we'll just go with the first rounders. Probably unfair to do the second rounders. Jaylen Brown.
Solid. Very, very, very solid.
Gershon Yabusele.
Good. I mean, to be determined.
Then we have Ante Zizic, who became Kyrie Irving. So skip down. that was
obviously we referred to it as the Ante Zizic trade. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Terry Rozier.
Solid, surprisingly solid.
R.J. Hunter.
Not so solid.
Marcus Smart.
Very solid, like brick solid.
James Young.
I don't care enough, so I'm not going to answer.
All right. Kelly Olynyk.
Surprisingly Canadian solid.
Yeah. So that's the Brad Stevens era of Danny Ainge draft pick. So I look at that, and then I look at what came before that. And, of course, there's probably some conversation there between those two about personnel and what would fit best within the system. And I think there was a real turning point once Brad Stevens arrived on the Danny Ainge draft fortunes. How do you feel about that?
Well, I have another theory as well. When Danny Ainge is allowed to draft in the top 5, he does pretty good. Mm-hmm. I mean, the talent up there is just so much more. It's a crapshoot.
Well, he got Rozier at 16.
Well, I'm not discounting the fact that he can get talent lower in the draft. I'm just saying that your chances, your odds of selecting a better player are obviously better at the top of the draft. Now, if you just cherry pick and say, oh, he picked Fab Melo, oh, he picked Jared Sullinger. Well, those guys were at the end of the first round. I mean, those, as far as I'm concerned, Jared Sillinger was a huge success for the position that he was drafted in.
Yeah.
Fab Melo, not so much, but he was a shot worth taking, right? He's a 7-footer with defensive potential. Like, I could see the reasoning behind that pick, just like I could see the reasoning behind all of his draft picks, going all the way back to Marcus Banks. I mean, every time he's made a pick, I could at least see the reasoning behind his selection, and then it becomes, does the player work hard enough? Does the player fit in? Does he develop over time? Does he have that kind of mentality and work ethic that's going to make him a success in this league? And for every time we drafted late in the first round, sometimes we got Tony Allen, sometimes we got J.R. Giddens. I mean, like, it is what it is. So that low in the draft, I don't think you can really. I mean, you have to kind of almost put Danny Ainge against other people who have drafted that low and see how well he did against that. Not, you can't just cherry pick Fab Melo and say, okay, he's not a good drafter.
Yeah, and it is harder with him because he just made so many, and when you make that many, there's obviously going to be a number of busts involved in there. He's picked good guys that have poised well for trades too, and I think that goes underrated in his record as well, as a number of these guys have slid into his great trades over the years, whether it be a Jeff Green type or a Marshawn Brooks, or going back to Joe Green and Al Jefferson, who eventually facilitated the Kevin Garnett trade. He has drafted guys that others have deemed valuable around the league.
Absolutely. The draft picks have value because of that potential factor. Everyone thinks that they can take a young guy like, I don't know, he never turned into a trade, but James Young is an example I always think about. He had visible talent. Like, he was supposed to be a scorer coming out of Kentucky. He never turned into anything. You can see why that selection was made, but you can also, once it comes out about, oh, he doesn't have a great work ethic, he doesn't have the attitude that you're looking for, you can see why he didn't necessarily pan out.
Does help having a ton more picks, too. You go down this list. They made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 selections in 2016 compared to 1 in 2009. So he's done a good job stockpiling these picks as well over the years, which counts as well. I do like how more guys are getting a chance in the league now, too. Keith Smith's favorite, the two-way contracts now. Allen and Bird have been able to stick around and get their chance, whereas other years they would have been fighting for that last spot, and they probably would have been out of here by the end of it. And if you had that around when it came down to that R.J. Hunter, James Young battle 2 years ago, both those guys are probably still sticking around in Maine and at least have a chance to get up and play some games when injuries happen and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's an encouraging sign to see the league going in the direction of developing and using that D-League/G League, whatever you want to call it these days, to their advantage. I think Adam Silver is doing the best he can with the infrastructure that he has to build up a kind of a sort of minor league system that will be at least a good developmental assistance to the major league clubs.
For the first, I didn't make it up a week ago, but for the first time ever, like, Maine excites me. I want to get up there and see a game and see Yabusele and Allen and Bird and my buddy Andrew White there, who they picked up out of Syracuse last year. The talent's getting better up there. They're doing a better job at it, and I'm excited about it. And I have been a vocal critic of the D-League over the years, as we've seen the likes of Fab Melo and James Young just tear it up there. I give them a lot of credit for the experimentation they're doing to get it more pumped up in that sense. And they're trying to raise the money a little bit too, which obviously helps as well. Draft picks are on the table. Our buddy Bill Sy over at the site threw this question at us, and as we speak now, the Lakers have gone down the tank, so we can thank Danny Ainge once again for having the Celtics in position to pick up another first-round pick, possibly. Lakers sit at 14-27, which is the 5th worst record in the NBA, and puts them in position to fall in that 2 to 5 range, which, if the Lakers do end up there pick-wise, the Celtics are going to get another top 5 pick next year, and as you said, that's another good shot at a great player. If it doesn't end up in that range, it's going to be Sacramento's pick next year heading to the Celtics, unless it's the number 1 overall pick. So Bill's question for us, Jeff, was, would you rather have the Lakers pick this year squeezed in at 2 to 5 if they do get it, or wait and see until next year where the Kings could be as high as 2, or if they fall to 8 or 10 or anywhere in between, the Celtics are going to get it unless it's number 1?
Yeah, I kind of see where Bill's going with this question, but I'm very much a Larry Bird in the hand is better than 2 in the bush type of guy. So I would rather have the pick now, have it in our system earlier, go ahead and get the guy, draft someone right now between 2 and 5 in a draft that legitimately seems to have 4 or 5 star players that could come out of it. So very comfortable with picking whoever lands or falls to us in that range. But if it does delay another year, I guess there's a good timing effort there in terms of it being a good draft pick to dangle as a trade chip, if you will, if we're going after an Anthony Davis, if you will. So I can see some value to it being the Kings pick. Certainly the Kings still remain Kings.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm also not going to bank too much. But I don't know. Who knows? I'm happy to watch the Lakers lose. If I have to go to watching the Kings lose, then I can do that too. So I'm very versatile in my watching of other teams lose.
And the big caveat there that I think would change both of our minds is the fact that Sacramento, even if they do get their pick next year, can't be that number 1 overall selection. And that trade went pretty well for Ainge to this point. But I still wish they were able to get that next pick completely unprotected. It still worries me just a little bit that it's going to turn into a number 1 pick one of these 2 years, and we're going to be going, in the end. But that's what happens with those things. There had to be some protection there, and now Philly's sitting with Fultz, wondering what's going to happen there, and we're having a full show about Tatum. So it worked out in some sense. I would lean towards this year as well. Of course, I'm no Kevin O'Connor, but I do like the top of this draft board. You have impact big men, DeAndre Ayton out of Arizona. Love the look of him. I'm going to start diving into more college tape as we go along. But there are impact big men in this draft. And with Baines, Tice being here right now, that definitely could be an area where they could upgrade to top-tier talent next to Horford there. So I do like the sound of that this season.
Yeah, I think we sound like spoiled Celtics fans when we're decrying.
We want even more.
First, yeah, exactly. I mean, just the fact that already it looks like the Lakers pick could be better than the Cavs pick. I mean the Nets pick that the Cavs got. That's mind blowing to me if you had told me that even a year ago. So it's awesome.
Yeah, we're spoiled, but we're not. I mean, we needed some good things to happen after Hayward went down. We didn't know what to say that night. I mean, we were just in complete doom and gloom. So I think it's only right that it's gone this way.
Right. The only fear that I have on a macro level is that we keep having these dreams about we are the Eastern Conference champions and we got the number 1 pick, and now we're still talking about the future. We got Jayson Tatum and we've got this Lakers pick. So I want to stop talking about the future, and I want to be a dominant team in the top of the championship conversation. And we're kind of getting there with our record, but we're not getting there necessarily with the narrative. I think everyone still, and perhaps rightfully so, says the ceiling on this team is questionable with the fact that Gordon Hayward's not in. He's not playing right now. So how much can this team actually win? Well, we're depending so much on 2 very young guys to lead us.
Well, that's why this Anthony Davis trade discussion keeps heating up, and I don't see any way it's going to happen this season, but I think there's a legitimate chance this summer to come. And the big question, if that ever does come to the table, is there anyone that's going to be untouchable? And this is another question Bill fired at us. If Davis is on the table right now, and of course the guy we're looking at when it comes to untouchables is Tatum, I think most other guys would be on the table right there. If Tatum was the deal breaker, how do you feel about that next summer?
Yeah, I mean, I addressed this briefly in my piece. If you base it purely on what he's doing right now, or even just a little bit of a progression, you could make the case very easily that Jayson Tatum plus other pieces are worth throwing into a trade for Anthony Davis. What my point is that by the time the Pelicans are ready to trade Anthony Davis, which could be this summer, next summer, whatever, I think by that time, Jayson Tatum's going to prove unequivocally that he's worth more than, or not worth throwing into an Anthony Davis trade plus something else. I just don't see him, the point of, like, there's no such thing as an untradeable player in Danny Ainge's world, but I think Tatum's value, based on his youth, based on his fact that he's on his rookie contract and so good so early, I don't think that there is a deal out there that is going to make him move Jayson Tatum. So he's about as close as an untouchable as you can get in Danny Ainge's universe.
Yeah, and he's always going to push for the value pull in those trades as well, which makes it unlikely that we're going to see Tatum go flying out in that sense, because Tatum probably is still, even with the picks left over, the most valuable asset they have to them going forward. There's just something about Davis that just intrigues me wildly, though. It's that Kevin Garnett factor, him being that size, him having that level of impact on both ends of the floor. And I still say I 100% agree with you in that sense that the Celtics aren't treated as true title contenders, even though the record's there, even though they made that East Finals run a year back. I think Davis would change all of that with just how larger than life his impact is. And of course he doesn't have that Kevin Garnett demeanor to him. It's that low-key attitude we were talking about in the opener that he beholds. But when you look at the impact on the court, when he's not injured, and that's the key point right there, he's Garnett-esque in that sense. And you remember yourself the thought around Garnett around the league before he came to Boston and after he came to Boston, and he was in that better system, able to win a championship. It all flipped, and eventually he became known as one of the greatest players of all time because of that. There are concerns about Davis, but I think you throw what we already see in him into the Celtics system where Stevens can get a hold of him and he's around better players. It just makes me giddy.
Yeah, I don't see any concerns with him personally. I'm a 100% huge Anthony Davis fan. Love his game. I actually really enjoy the conversation in terms of comparing him to Kevin Garnett because I think they are very similar. They have the ability to make an impact on both ends of the court. They are so long, they're so strong, so talented, etc. So yeah, don't get me wrong. I would love to have Anthony Davis in a Boston Celtics uniform, and I would give up half the farm and a few other farms in order to get him in here. I just don't want to necessarily, jettison a Jayson Tatum who, like I said in my piece this morning, he could be that franchise guy. He could be as good as Anthony Davis down the line. So that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Definitely not going to happen this year. There's a number of things you can talk about, the reasons it wouldn't work, money, the Pelican situation, all the above. So we can throw that forward to the summer. For now, it's the Celtics, it's the Cavaliers, and of course the Raptors still in the conversation now. The interesting thing about the Raptors, they had the Celtics number last year and the year before that. It was just a good matchup for them and not necessarily so for the Celtics. And we've seen that matchup once this year between them that the Celtics got the upper hand in. So that matchup's interesting for me going forward. I'm really excited to see those two teams go at it again. Celtics, Cavaliers, we know how those two teams line up a little bit. So how do you feel about those two teams at the top of the East? How much do they scare you? How much do you think the Celtics stand a chance against both of them in a 7-game series when it comes down to that, or if it comes down to that?
Yeah, sure. And by the way, I wanted to give a shout-out to Cooper Wyatt, who gave us a question about the Cavs and the Raptors on Twitter, asking about who are we more concerned with, Raptors or Cavs. The Raptors are an interesting team in that, last year I think they were much more of at least DeMar DeRozan in particular was much more of a what we were worried about with Jayson Tatum, long twos and low percentage shots. He's kind of like the Kobe light, if you will. But he's expanded his game out to three-point land, and he's now being more of a threat. And so they've changed up their offense to be a little bit more, for lack of a better word, Morey-like. And I'm interested to see how that matches up. I almost feel like last year it gave the Celtics fits because they weren't used to people actually taking so many shots inside the arc. And now, perhaps when they go back to more of a modern game, maybe the Celtics know how to match up with them a little bit better. So it's kind of like a inverse relationship there. But I don't know. I think that the Raptors are a very, very good team. They've done a lot of great things, and I would definitely be concerned in a matchup with them in the playoffs. But I also tend to like our chances too.
And Zach Lowe interviewed Dwayne Casey on the one of the ESPN podcasts about 2-3 weeks ago. I really enjoyed that listen, and it did dive deep into the systematic changes that the Raptors made going into this season. You have C.J. Miles there. They drafted OG and Anadami. That's a tough one right there. That guy. And he's been great for them. And we have seen a rejuvenated DeRozan. Kyle Lowry still as good as ever at that point guard spot for them. But they did have a system issue there, and they addressed it, and there's a lot more motion, a lot more spacing there this season. So as much as the Celtics have changed, they've changed too. And they play next on February 6th. The Celtics beat them 95-94 back in November, so very early in the season where the Celtics were on a tear, unequivocally then. 21 points from Horford that night, 13 and 7 from Tatum, 18 from Brown, and they were able to pull out of that one. I'm intrigued by that matchup because the Celtics did skate around them last year, and that was a big reason they made it to the East Finals, I think, is they didn't have to deal with that matchup. But now both teams have changed so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a dogfight, kind of like it was with the Wizards last year. If they do meet in the playoffs, I think that would be an interesting matchup, to be sure.
So Cavaliers, here we are again. Yeah. I talked to our good friend Justin Rowan last week. We had the big discussion on whether or not they're trying or whether or not that's a real thing. And
that was a great conversation.
That gets in my head like crazy, so I'm not going to go off on a tear about that this week. Where are we with the Cavaliers? Are we concerned, or is this just another example of them trying to get through the 82 games and then turn it on come playoff time? I do think it's very interesting this year because that roster's new as well. They are facing new challenges there, new players that they have to get instituted in that system. That's why I feel it's different. Do you feel it's any different from last year?
Well, I think it's different. They do have a different cast of characters, and they're missing one, Kyrie Irving. That's a huge difference. But not to sound like every other ESPN pundit and everything like that. I mean, they do have LeBron James. They do have one of the best players, perhaps, of all time. So that you do have to take that into account. On the other hand, one man can't make an entire season. You can't overcome the fact that they have one of the worst defenses in the league. That defense is really problematic for them, and no great team has that bad of a defense. So I am hoping that is their Achilles heel, and I saw somebody else say this point. They've got Isaiah Thomas and Kevin Love in their starting rotation, and they lean heavily on guys like Calderon and stuff like that. Like, this isn't going to be a great defensive team. There's only so much Jay Crowder can do as one person, and he's struggled this year. So yes, I'm enjoying the fact that they're struggling, but at the same time, you always have to give them that asterisk of, yes, they have LeBron James. They're going to be dangerous in any playoff series. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to give Golden State a run for their money, but I think that they're good enough to really compete in the East, just based on the fact that they have, LeBron, Kevin Love, Isaiah Thomas at whatever percent he's at this point, and shooters around them.
That LeBron factor's key. Every LeBron team has made the finals since 2010 when the Celtics made it, and so that's something the Cavaliers are going to be able to hang their heads on. But at the same time, we're reaching a point where he is playing massive minutes. He's getting older. And I think on the other side, that LeBron factor is going to be key possibly in their demise as well, because he is a free agent this summer. There is going to be that possible out for him at the end of the door if they do fall short this year. And then on the other side, there is going to come some point. It seems like it's so far in the future that it's never going to come. But with them having to play him 35, 40 minutes a night just to be competitive, there's going to be a time where that hits a wall for them. I mean, we've seen LeBron do things that no human has ever done.
Yeah.
But at some point, the 35, 40-minute games are going to have some sort of tangible effect. And I feel like they are so ride or die on LeBron at this point that if there's any slip-up on his end, it's going to open a huge door for the Celtics.
Yeah, I keep waiting for it. There's just like every other NFL team keeps waiting for Tom Brady to slow down. I mean, it's a little inhuman, and it's weird to see how long he's been able to sustain this success and health and whatnot. But hey, all you can do is tip your cap to him and wait for it to die.
How do you
die? But you know what I mean.
Halt maybe was the better word.
Yeah, not wishing any ill will on anybody. Don't twist it.
That's how much we're anticipating the playoffs around here. Last question I got for you. Isaiah has not had the best start out there. He's coming back from injury, and he's had a couple 0-for-7 starts over the last 2 nights. How do you feel about that front now that we've seen him and that there has been visible slippage in the first few games back, or is this just an adjustment period for him?
Oh, I definitely just see it as an adjustment period. I wasn't expecting him to have, what was it, something like 16 minutes and or 16 points in 14 minutes or something ridiculous like that in his first game. I mean, I wasn't expecting him to come back and score any buckets at all until or at least come along slowly. Like, I expected him to struggle early. Everyone should have expected that because he's out of shape, and maybe that he was just running on adrenaline that first night. So I'm not going to put too much into that small sample size. I assume that he's going to work his way back into into shape, and I mean, he's learning a new system. He's coming back from injury. He's got 100 different things going against him, which is, by the way, exactly where he likes to be. So he loves that chip on his shoulder, and he loves to be the underdog. So more power to him.
What's the percentage chance that him and Paul Pierce are duking it out on the Shamrock over a video on February 11th?
I hate this topic. I really don't care. I mean, I'm the last person to worry about this kind of stuff. If they want to have an issue, then I'm sure the Celtics PR group is going to have their hands full. But I couldn't care less. Just give me my Paul Pierce night and have Isaiah have a nice tribute video. If it happens to be on the same night, I don't care. If they don't have it on the same night, I don't care.
1 month from Thursday, Cavaliers Celtics at the Garden. Paul Pierce night and Isaiah Thomas night as well. We'll see how that goes. Jeff Clark joining us today is the boss over at CelticsBlog.com. He wrote about Jayson Tatum this week, so go check that out over on that site, and go give us a rate and review if you can over at Apple Podcasts, Stitchers, wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on the CLNS Media app, so be sure to check out clnsmedia.com as we continue to expand our Celtics, Bruins, Red Sox, and league-wide coverage over on that front. Great work by Nick Gelso and the rest of them. Thanks for being with us here today, Jeff. We got another great New Year shows coming, and we're happy to have you here for part of it.
Thanks, Bobby. It's a great show.
Good night, everybody. See you next week.